Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the product stage. You have joined us for the best session, I will say. This is where I am so excited. My name is Kayla Schneider. I lead our solutions engineering team here at Virtuous. What that means is I spend my day doing this, showing our product, what it can do, how it can make your life easier. And that is what we are talking about today, how we can make your life easier. I am joined with my teammate, Ashley. Ashley, want to give a little intro?
Hey everybody, I'm Ashley Keene. I'm a solutions engineer also at Virtuous, and I spent about 14 years in the nonprofit world prior to my time at Virtuous. So I'm really excited today to show you guys how I would have used Virtuous to really make my job a lot easier in that time. So.
Yes. So Ashley and I both come from that database administrator space. We were the people running reports, doing global ads, global deletes, being the query person, running everything for all the people, and having processes upon processes upon processes to do our jobs. I'm not joking when I say I had just like manuals that I would give my analysts to like, here's how you run this specific process. Run this query. Now this query needs to be taken to delete this attribute. Now go back and run this other query and then add this attribute. So many steps, so many times, and so much time. And so this demo right now is going to focus on how Virtuous will help your team streamline internal processes. What could it look like to have automation running every single day to do, those tasks, running the same queries over and over and over again. So as you can tell, I'm a little bit excited. This is definitely my best, exciting, most fun part about Virtuous is this portion of it right here. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let Ashley share, but I'm probably going to like chime in of my things, of what I love. But Ashley, go for it and start talking about it.
Awesome. Thanks. So, like Kayla said, when I managed our database at the university, I spent hours and hours each week doing database maintenance. I would run queries, export data, manipulate it, and then either import it back in or maybe even run bulk updates on those groups to get those records up to date. Pulling and segmenting our mailing list for large direct mail pieces could be a multi day process. This was all time spent doing back end processes that could have been better spent focusing on our fundraising efforts. But unfortunately, I wasn't using a CRM with automation workflows like Virtuous. I'm sure that most of you that use Virtuous know about the power of automation when it comes to connecting with donors. We can use automation to shorten that time of acknowledgement, increase the personalization to our donors so that everyone can have that major donor experience. But did you also realize that Virtuous automations can complete some of these time consuming database maintenance tasks? So today we're going to talk through ways to save yourself time and also increase the accuracy of your data by utilizing automations. So let's start by diving into the database, and I am going to share my screen now. So we're going to start by looking at a contact record first. So we can see where some of this data that we're going to be updating through automations actually lives. So here we're looking at a household record. Within Virtuous, we have a natural state of householding. So what that means is I have a unique ID here at the household level, but I also have unique IDs at the individual level. So what this is doing is allowing me to see this record holistically. I can communicate with them as a household when appropriate, and then on an individual basis when that's more appropriate. I also want to point out our organization groups here, visible in this upper left-hand corner. Notice that this donor is part of two different organization groups. I can use these organization groups in Virtuous to hold donor portfolios. So if you have gift officers with donors assigned to them, that would be how I would do that. Or if you're a chapter-based organization, or maybe even a K through 12 school or university that has alumni groups in different areas, you could use those organization groups to categorize donors into groups in that way. So this donor household is part of my portfolio, and it's also part of my Greenville chapter. So moving down the record here, we have custom fields. So this is where I'm storing that custom data that Virtuous doesn't have a hard-coded field for right out of the box. So data that's maybe unique to my organization. Here, I'm choosing to track language spoken and prospect status as examples. We're going to see later in the automations how the database can update that prospect status field for me as the donor moves through our major gift qualification process. Moving down next, we have our tags. Tags are going to allow me to target and segment my audience. So I could use these to include or exclude donors from the email or mailing. I could use tags to trigger an automation, but I could also have that automation workflow add and remove tags for me based on what has changed about the donor's record. So we'll look through all of that. Moving down, we have our natively integrated wealth data coming in from Donor Search. We can use this data to prospect, even triggering automations by what we're seeing here. We could even have the system go ahead and screen a new donor through automation as soon as they make their first gift and have that data appended to their record. Moving over, we've got our contact notes. Here I can track contacts I have with this donor. I could attach documents like obituaries or news articles, but I'm also able to keep a historical record of change here. So we're going to see that in an automation, that if I want to keep something for a historical perspective, this is a great way to do it, is adding a contact note. Finally, we have our tasks. Here I can create tasks to remind members of our staff to reach out to a donor. We're going to see in automations how we can have the system create these tasks for us, saving us time, but also making sure that we're not failing to identify donors who are in need of contact. So now that we've seen where that data is stored, that we're going to pull from to trigger our automations, and also data that we can update through automations, let's dive in and look at a few examples of how this can be implemented. So first, I'm going to take a look at my donor segmentation workflow. This is a pretty simple and straightforward workflow that's categorizing and segmenting my donors. This particular workflow is built based on a filter. You have the option to build a workflow based on a filter or a query. So letting you see what that looks like. My data here, my criteria is pretty standard, so I'm able to just filter that versus having to use a query. So I'm looking at people who have life-to-date giving of between $1 and $999, and then they're on a household record. So I don't want to pull organizations and foundations into this segmentation. So when I run this segmentation, my donors are going to be placed in the appropriate segment based on that giving history, based on those filters. The system is then adding the appropriate tag to their record. And if you'll notice, the system is also removing any old tags. So if I have a donor that moves from entry level to mid-level, I can remove that entry level donor tag and then add that mid-level donor tag as well. So now that we have our tags placed on the records, let's see how I can use them to run segmentation for a large mailing. So I'm going to hop over here to our campaign records. This is where we run segmentation within Virtuous. So I'll look here at my year-end campaign. And then we're going to take a look specifically at my direct mail communication. That's where I'm building my segments. So here I'm able to create my different segments. I can name them. I can add in a description of that segment. And then I'm going to attach a query to each segment. So I ensure that each donor ends up in the correct place. These queries here are built based on the tags that I just created through my donor segmentation automation. I'm also prioritizing these segments in case of any overlap. So for example, I could have somebody who's both a lapsed donor and also in that entry-level donor category, for example, or maybe even the mid-level donor category based on their past giving. But here what I'm saying is I want those major and mid-level donors to stay in their appropriate segments regardless of lapse status, and those segments take priority. But for those entry-level donors, I want them to be placed in my lapsed segment if they are lapsed. Otherwise, they'll fall into their regular entry-level donor segment. When I'm ready, I can go ahead and run that segmentation. The system is then going to tell me how many contacts are in each category so that I can correctly plan for my correct number of mail pieces. I can even drill in here to these segments if I want to spot check to make sure donors landed where I expected them to. When I'm satisfied with my segmentation, I can then choose to download that segmentation, that contact information that I'm going to be using for that year-end mailing, and each donor is going to be categorized in that correct segment. And then kind of on the back end of things, when my gifts come in and we process those gifts with these segment codes attached, The system is then calculating ROI for us based on that cost per mail piece that we've entered for each segment. So this is giving me a real-time look at the success of that mail piece. Pretty cool. When I think about how much time I could have saved allowing automation to add tags for me and then using those tags to run this segmentation, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. This is a task that would have taken me days, possibly even weeks to get just right with all of the data cleanup, the exporting, and then manually manipulating data to build those segments in Excel. But here in Virtuous, I can save all of that manual processing and all of that time.
This is where I'm going to butt in, Ashley. You know my story here. This would have literally saved me months every single year. At the university, we had so many segments. We had over 50 segments for each direct mail. When I first started, a while ago, probably over a decade ago over there, it took me at least a week and a half just to run the appropriate, like getting the appropriate segments on the records, right? Let alone doing this portion of the segmentation of it. But weeks, it took me like a week. And that's hoping and praying that I didn't make one false step, right? Like I didn't run one query out of place or anything like that. We then got some technology with a company, probably a lot of you know of, Ovomatic, where they had an amazing product called Segmentomatic that saved my life, but it still took 2 to 3 days to run a direct mail. So it went from over, a week and a half to 2 to 3 days. With Virtuous, this process, because the system is automatically adding and removing my audiences for me with that tag feature that we just saw, right? It's creating those tags, it's keeping them up to date daily. I no longer have to go in, clean that up, do all that work beforehand, like Ashley said. So what I have to do is I get to come in here and then my segmentation is in here, right? I get to associate those tags appropriately. Then the system is assigning those people out. And now I have my direct mail list ready to go. This would literally have saved hours, weeks, months of my life just spent pulling 8 direct mails a year. And so this time alone, I think is massive to think about how we can appropriately bring that information together. There was a question on like, how can you filter if you're just using filters? Is there a way to edit the contact list or whatnot? And I think that's part of like what we're going to look at next is beyond the filters, you can build your automations off of queries, which are much more complex that allow you to build in excludes and or statements and those types of things. And so I think we're heading next, right, Ashley?
Yeah, for sure. So thinking about all of that time savings, let's look at another process that would otherwise be very manual without automation. So we're going to see how we can significantly improve efficiency, saving that time, a lot of time, and also improving our data accuracy. So for that, I'm going to hop into my Giving Society automation. This is my favorite one because this is a process that took me so much time and gave me so many headaches when I was at the university setting. So here, this workflow is showing me 3 different Giving Society levels. So this could be as many levels as needed for your organization if you guys have a more robust Giving Society program. This automation workflow is triggered by a query, like Kayla said. So rather than using that filter, I'm using the query functionality here. So for my sponsor society, I'm looking at year-to-date giving is between $2,500 and $4,999. Again, I'm also only wanting to pull households in here. This could certainly have more criteria. Like Kayla said, I could have additional criteria here. I could build in or statements. But for this purpose, for my Giving Society, it's a pretty basic qualification. Then the system is going to add that tag to the record once I qualify based on that query. I can also have the system go ahead and add a note to their record indicating that they've reached that giving level. So this is really important to get that historical view. Like I mentioned when we were looking at notes on the contact record, this is going to keep that kind of date stamp for me of when did this person reach that Giving Society level. And that's helpful for me because at the end of the year, if I'm starting everyone over at 0, I'm able to keep that historical record of that Giving Society level each donor reached in that given year. Now let's say that my donor gives an additional gift to bump them to the next level. The system will then remove that prior tag and add the new Giving Society level tag. And this works even if I skip a step. So I could move from sponsors to president society, and the system would know to remove that previous tag. So again, this was a process that was so cumbersome to me at the university. It was so difficult that I only ran it once a month. And so I'd have gift officers and the VP kind of frustrated that we didn't have information up to date, but it took so much time. But by utilizing automation here, I'm able to keep the database updated on a daily basis. This automation is going to run nightly for me, and I'm not even having to touch these records. And it's also giving me a better, more accurate data, because I know, because it's based on query, that everybody's falling into the correct society level.
Yeah, I think one thing I love about this as well is that this is able to take into account just hard credit gifts in our world, right? Like just cash that came out of my hand, but also being able to quickly bring in those like donor advised fund monies or what we call pass through giving, or think of donor advised fund, family foundation. The idea of organization giving. We can look at the things of where we're seeing the ability to say, hey, we want to be able to include and see these types of people. Ashley's here in the query of what are we looking at? Here we're looking at year-to-date giving plus pass-through. So being able to say things like, this is what I want to include. I could also but exclude anybody with this type of gift or this type of tag on their record. You can include and exclude people based on that information. And it really allows you to get some more complex opportunities there as well. Megan, yes. So can you add as part of the automation notification to a team member that this has happened? 100%. Yes. So that is part of what that next step can be. Whatever your process is, when we think about automation, the system can help take multiple steps on. It's not just identifying, which we're doing here. It can then allow you to take next steps in the process, whether it be maybe you have the same email that goes out to every single person when they reach the status. Cool. Like the system can send that out for you automatically. Or whether it be a task added to somebody, a certain member of your staff that then needs to create a welcome packet, is what we had in our President Society, a welcome packet that was sent out and be able to do that daily. That task goes and is automatically added, which then they get an email letting them know they have a new task. And they can go and create that, and you can see, are there any outstanding packets that haven't been in? Maybe, Kayla's out sick for a week. We can see, and in the system, everything's integrated in one place. All of those outstanding packets, somebody else can see and complete those tasks as well.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Kayla. So if I did want to add another action, I would just simply do that right here. And then I would choose the type of action. So I could add a task here, just like Kayla said, to follow up. All right, well, let's take a look at how we can ensure those donors who are assigned to a gift officer are receiving frequent contact from us and that no one is slipping through the cracks. So for that, I'm going to take a look at my assigned prospects with no contact for 90 days workflow. You'll notice here that I have 3 separate workflows that are running simultaneously to handle portfolios handle those portfolios differently based on the gift officer's preference. First, I've got queries built to find the donors in each portfolio who haven't been contacted for 90 days or more. So we'll take a look at that, see what that looks like. So here, I'm looking for anybody that doesn't have a note in the last 90 days and that is part of my portfolio. That's how I'm placing people into this workflow. We see here in my workflow that I want this to start with an SMS text message to the donor. Then I'm going to follow that up with a phone call. Notice that the task that's being created is assigned to me, and that's going to show in my task management area in Virtuous. So kind of going back to the previous question of, can I have both internal and external tasks, automation tasks happening at the same time? Absolutely. Next, we've got David, who's starting his workflow with an email to the donor, and then he's making that phone call. And then finally, I have Matt, who prefers his donors to receive a follow-up postcard, and then he's going to follow with that phone call. I would have absolutely loved to have had this for my gift officers, but because I didn't, I had to pull contact reports, search portfolios, and then manually create tasks for this follow-up to happen because the gift officers certainly weren't going to do it. So this would have saved us all a lot of time and also made sure that our donors we were staying in constant contact with those that we should have been.
I'm gonna hop in again, Ashley. Yes. My team, we had in between like 7 to 10, depending on the time, of major gift officers. And this was a huge, huge deal for us. Making sure, having 200 or so people in a portfolio is a lot. And you can't expect everybody to keep that in their mind, right? There are certain people that maybe just come up quicker in your mind. Oh, I need to make sure I'm talking to them. I'm talking to them. But then there are other people that maybe are consistently giving those larger gifts, but they don't take a lot of time for relationships. They don't need a lot of interaction. They're just those consistent givers. I think this is a great way to help our major gift officers connect in the times that we need, but also, as Ashley mentioned, save our administrative staff time as well. Instead of having to run queries or create reports or have those and remind them, and they would ask you to pull that query for them and say, hey, don't forget, I made that for you and I saved it on for you. You could do that yourself, right? The system is automatically adding a task to their dashboard, which then allows them to get an email as well, right? I know that my gift officers lived by their phone. So having it be able to push an email out to them saying, hey, you have a new task. You haven't talked to so-and-so. We also have a mobile app that sends out push notifications for these tasks as well. So there are different things that allow our teams to save time, which in turn save you time on the back end as well, allowing you to have the ability to do that as well. A great question from Sophia on, if we're a very small shop, instead of gift officers, can we assign tasks to volunteers to make a call? Tasks can be assigned to anyone in the system who has access. So when you create access, you're actually creating the ability, like you're choosing what type of access somebody's getting. So in Virtuous, you have unlimited users that you can come in and assign profiles to. When we look at the ability to think through what someone should be able to see, we do have restricted permissions to say, great, this volunteer should only see this type of people. They shouldn't see any giving information, or however we want to include that. That can be done for sure. And also I have seen it, the ability to kind of maybe even like schedule reports to be sent to those volunteers as well. So being able to say, maybe they're not going to be in there every day, but that they work from they're going to volunteer with you from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on a Monday morning. Every Monday, that's when they're doing their job. The system can have a report sent to them with the same tasks ready to go. So a couple of different ways, I think, that allow you to help with your volunteers working this as well.
Thanks, Kayla. All right, so finally, let's take a look at how Virtuous can help us run our major donor qualification process and really automate a lot of the steps along the way. This automation is starting with Virtuous helping me identify potential major donors using my major donor identification query. So here, this query, maybe I am pulling anybody who makes a gift of a certain amount. That's going to kind of flag them. Or maybe we do a wealth screening and they come back with a high wealth capacity. And we want to take a deeper look to see if they might be a good prospect for portfolio assignment. Once they've met one of those pieces of criteria that I've indicated in my query here, their system is placing me in our major donor suspect group here. So this is kind of like our holding place for those donors while we're determining if they're a good fit for major gifts. The next step here, and the second step in this process, is we're adding a tag to their record. The system is also updating their custom field. Remember that custom field that I had set to prospect status? So we can update that and change it to say qualification. Then it's creating a task for our prospect research manager to do their actual research. Notice I'm building in a pretty significant delay here to give her time to do her job. And then we're removing those tags, removing them from that major donor suspect group and removing that major gift qualification tag. At this point, that prospect researcher, kind of outside of this automation workflow, would either disqualify the donor, so maybe there's nothing left to be done with them, or assign that person to the appropriate portfolio. And then kind of the next step of our process picks up. So once I've got a donor in my portfolio, again, built on a query here of anybody in my portfolio, now we can send them through our intro flow. So notice here, I have a different flow than David. Let me scroll over there. Okay. You can have flows built out for each gift officer here. Here, the system is updating their tags for me, adding in their custom fields. For my portfolio, I've chosen my first outreach to the donor to be an intro call here. So the system has scheduled that task for me. And then I've also had the system go ahead and schedule my next quarterly check-in call with that donor as well. But looking over here at David's portfolio, he's connecting first by email to his donor and then following up with that intro call. This whole process is such a huge time saver because the system is doing so much of the updating, the kind of changing one record from one field to another for us. We're making sure also that no potential major donors are slipping through the cracks and not being identified. Kayla, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Oh, you know it, Ashley. Thanks for bringing me in. I think this is so massive. The idea, right, there is still a little bit of staff time in this when we think about there's a researcher, right? In this process here, there is a researcher. Technically, you don't have to have a researcher at all. Like if you don't have somebody doing research for you and you just need to have somebody automatically added based on wealth capacity or anything, the system can automatically do that for you. It can automatically add them into into a portfolio that highlights them as a major donor and assigns a task out and those types of things. But I love this process because this is actually exactly what my portfolio process looked like at the university. So being able to assign that task, right? The great thing about this, I think, is yes, there's still staff time, but think about all the other time that it's saving the researcher, right? Instead of having to go and run the query on their own, identifying who they've already looked at or being able to do that, right? The system's automatically identified them for them, added them into a group, and now is listing them out, ready to go, right? Here are the people that you need to look at today. And so having the system automatically do that for them, and then doing all the other things that a researcher would have had to do, right? Remove some tags, remove them from the organization group, add them and more tags, assign out a task, email, hey, I just added somebody to your portfolio, right? All those other pieces that take so much time. Even if you think, well, it's only 7 minutes per, prospect, 7 minutes per prospect every single time you do that is a lot when you add it up over a day, right? If I'm even doing, if I'm only qualifying 10 people a day, that's 70 minutes of my time, over an hour, which I could have gotten back to do more prospecting, right? So just that time savings, I think, is so valuable. I think Ashley mentioned it, right? We estimate about a 20% decrease in staff time when you use Virtuous. And if you think about that in the span of one work week, 5 days, that's an entire day back so that you can continue to do the work of connecting and strategizing and doing the work that you need to do when the system can help you do the rest of that. As you can tell, I get really excited about the system helping you do more work, becoming more efficient. And so I think there's one more thing we want to show how you can be a little bit more efficient as well, right?
Yeah. So now that we've looked at how internal automations can save us time with database maintenance, I thought we'd look at the gift and contact import within Virtuous and see how that can save us valuable time during the gift processing process. So I'm going to hop over there. So it's really important that the gifts go to the right place the first time. We certainly don't want to be dealing with duplicates on the back end. This is especially important when we consider that we can be using automations to send a donor through a new donor welcome series when they've been, but if they give a gift and they're duplicated in the system, they've been giving for years, but they simply gave with a different email address, I could send them through that workflow, and I shouldn't have. So here we want to make sure that that gift given online is attached appropriately to the record that's already in the system. But we can also add in our offline gifts here as well. So think of this gift import tool as kind of like customs at the airport. So here we're checking gifts using human eyes to look at the pieces that need a little extra time and attention. This keeps us from having to sift through all of the data, but just brings to our attention those areas that need an extra look. So if I'm looking at this screen here, this is where my gifts are coming in. Any gifts that are given online through our online giving tool are going to be automatically bundled here for you nightly, and that bundle will be ready for you to process the next morning. But let's say that you're maybe having a giving day, or it's Giving Tuesday, where you're going to have a large number of gifts on one day. You can also push a bundle over for processing, just so you can keep up with your gift processing throughout the day. But on a normal day, I would just let the system bundle for me and have that bundle waiting for me the next morning. I can also create a manual gift bundle. So if I'm working through a stack of checks that came in the mail, I can enter those gifts manually here. Or if I can upload a CSV file if I have those gifts already in that format. Those are options as well. But let's take a look at a bundle and kind of see how Virtuous is helping save me time here. A couple things to notice as I open my bundle. I've got 3 buckets here at the bottom. I've got match needed, update needed, and ready for import. This is the system running these gifts through a matching process that's looking at contact information. So we're looking at last name, physical address, email address, phone number to determine if this person already exists in the database. My ready for import bucket here, these gifts are those that are ready to go. So they've matched appropriately to the right record. All the contact information is the same. All the project information looks good. This is going to save me time by not even having to look at these. They're ready to go. We can move on. If I hop over to my match needed bucket, here we're able to create new records if needed. So coming into this gift, let's take a look here. This donor, Jessica, she doesn't exist in our system. We've looked at her last name, we've looked at her email, her phone number, physical address, we've looked at all the information that she's provided to us, and nothing is matching. So we're able to create her record, a new record for her right from this screen. So unlike some other systems, I don't have to go out and create a record and then come back into my gift processing tool. This is all going to happen at the same time. We also have quick keys available. So if you had a large group of new donors coming in, again, maybe going back to that Giving Day or Giving Tuesday, you wouldn't have to click through this over and over. It can all be done at once. Next, we'll take a look at our update needed bucket. So this is where the system has matched the appropriate record. It's found a match, but we have some new contact information to consider. So this gift here has matched appropriately to Roger and Jean Sparks. But if we notice here, they've given us a new mailing address. We can choose here to either add that address as secondary, add it as primary, or we can ignore it. Virtuous is highlighting the new information that was provided for me, so I'm not having to search through to find out what is different about this record. And then another thing that's happening when in this gift import process is looking at householding. So remembering that we have that natural state of householding in Virtuous where we have households and then individuals within that household. So if we take a look at this next gift, we can see what that might look like if that householding, if we run into a snag there. So here the system is saying, well, we have someone who looks similar. Could Steve possibly be part of the same household as Jane? This is looking at last name and address. We see Jane has given before, but we didn't have Steve in our database. So should we add Steve as an individual to Jane's household, or should I be creating a new household for Steve? Again, we don't want to send Steve our new donor welcome series because he's not a new donor. We simply want to add him to the existing household with Jane. Other great things that are happening here in the gift and contact import tool. So we can create new recurring gifts. We can create new pledges. We can process credit card payments here through as well. All of that can happen in one place and that through the gift and contact import, giving that cleaner, smoother experience. Anything you want to add there, Kayla?
Yeah, I think it just is that idea of it, right? It's a one-stop shop. And that's really what I appreciate. Like my gift entry team, they were doing all of these steps to get ready to even just process our gifts. They were searching the database to see if they already existed, and adding their ID number to the top of the check to make sure that they could then just key it in when they got through. And then during that time, they were also highlighting information on the check or on the gift information that had changed, so they could go back after they processed the gifts to update the information. Let alone if there was a tribute, they had to go through and see any new tributes. They'd have to add that first and then come back and do that process. I just love that it's a one place to be able to do what you need to do to get the gifts in. I think it's just here we go. We're adding this information in, we're starting, and it's a really quick fashion of getting that in. Even when we're searching for doing like a a stash of checks in front of me. It's like a Google search, right? I'm able to say Justin, and it brings the database down to all the Justins or Justines. It's going to then say the last name, and I'm able to bring that down and cull the database down quickly and easily for me as well. It just makes it a little bit easier and faster to be able to do some of that work, I think, which in other systems could take a lot of time. I'd have to be able to do that. So I just really, really appreciate the ability to be able to just save keystrokes. One, right? Every keystroke takes extra time. So any keystrokes that you can save is massive there as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Kayla. And I just want to show really quickly how I can do that kind of quick search. If I've got a stack of checks in front of me, like Kayla said, it's like a Google search. The system is going to look for a match for any information that I type in. Notice my matches change as I add more information. And then I can just select this donor and then keep moving on my gift entry process. Just a really clean experience to, again, not have to search, look for IDs ahead of time, and then come back over and add the gifts in. All right, so I hope you've seen how utilizing internal automations, bringing data in through the Virtuous Gift and Contact Import tool can save you valuable time and lead to more efficient and accurate processes. Getting that time back in your day is really invaluable as you work to support your organization's mission. One thing I do want to mention, we focused really heavily on internal automation today, but we have a full suite of marketing tools to help you engage donors as well. We saw this in a few automations, but these actions can be external to donors as well. So sending things like text messages, emails, and letters, those can be sent automatically based on a workflow. So you can engage with donors when they reach a certain giving milestone, or maybe even a volunteering milestone. You could send them personalized messages on their birthday, or you could help new donors get engaged in the organization and help turn them into repeat donors. And just going back to one of the things that Kayla said, ultimately, we hear that organizations that effectively use automations experience a 20% reduction in staff time due to those efficiencies gained.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ashley. Obviously, this is my
Yeah.
favorite topic to talk about. So that was fantastic. We did have a good question from Justin. Just wanting to know a little bit more about how the quick keys work. And so quick keys are just ability to be able to skip over a bunch of information. So skipping one, to be able to add new people in bulk. That's one option of being able to like say, great, add all of my new contacts instead of having to look through each of them. But also being able to skip around to the ability of like, how do we want to process the credit card? How do I edit the check and the gift? What buckets am I going to be forcing through to be able to quickly move and save through? So just a couple of like, again, just saving keystrokes or saving clicks on a mouse are things that we want to be able to do quickly so that you all don't have to do that searching or whatnot there as well. Yeah. Any other questions around efficiencies or what automation, internal automation can look like here in Virtuous? While I wait for maybe any questions to come up, I just want to highlight a couple of the next sessions that are happening here on this product stage. Our next session today is going to be focused on structuring your data. I know it can be a little scary when you think about data in the system and how to get that in there and where it should live. So if you're going through maybe a process of you're a new nonprofit and you're thinking about what does it look like to get started in a CRM, or even if you are going through or thinking about doing a migration, what that looks like, or even if you're in a system and you are just thinking about how can I use my data more efficiently, this session would be great. Our teammate Emily is going to walk through what it can look like to really look at your data and understand what do I actually need to hold? What's the purpose of this data? And where should it be held? Because I want to keep it actionable. I want to be able to use it. And how do I want to use it there as well? And so it's going to be a really great session that's happening this next one today. Tomorrow, we have two sessions that I'll be leading, one around how to get your frontline fundraisers to love technology. How can we get them to use the technology we build? And so this will be showing how Virtuous works for frontline fundraisers, right? We spent a lot of time on what it looks like for our administrative staff to do their job, but I really want to focus tomorrow on what it looks like to have a frontline fundraiser be able to use a database and get data that they need when they need it and really find the power in that data as well. And then the last session I'll be leading tomorrow is around our VOMO product, which is our volunteer mobilization, how to make it easy and frictionless for your volunteers to sign up and get involved in the opportunities that you have, looking at background checks and liability forms and questions that you need answered, right? All of that. And then how does it integrate with Virtuous to have one seamless look, be able to steward your donors appropriately and all that good things, and steward your supporters and volunteers as well. So that's what's coming up on this stage. Yes, Sophia, there is an app for volunteers. So if you want to look at what that is tomorrow, it's going to be the 10 o'clock session tomorrow that I'm talking about VOMO, and you'll be able to see what that whole thing is about. Sandra's question is there a way to update your import settings so that you are not having to match household gifts to an individual? I have to match at least half of my gifts with each import, and it takes a lot of time. I am not quite sure what you're asking. I think that you might be a current user. And so I think this question would be a fabulous question to go ask our training team on. They're like literally doing one-on-one sessions right now. So they can walk you through that gift and contact import specifically, and you can walk through with them, share your screen, see what you're getting, and they can kind of give you some tips and tricks on that as well. I think that would be a helpful way to look at that, because you should be able to get those gifts in matching to the right person when they come in. And so that's on, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's like a maybe expert bar. I think that might be what it's called right now. Perfect. Well, I really appreciate all of you coming and learning about what Virtuous can do for internal automations. Going to give you all back a little bit of time right now. Take a break, stretch your legs, grab some coffee, and hop into some more sessions. Again, thanks so much for joining us here, and hopefully we'll see you again in another session. Bye, y'all.
Hi, everybody.